All right, guys. Joe McDonough here with CageSidePress.com. I am joined by Bellator 251 Victor, Janay Harding. Janay, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate the time. And I mean, to jump right in, I mean, it must feel good to get back in that Bellator cage. I mean, it's been a year off for you, and to get back in and have the performance you did and get the win.
Yeah, it was definitely incredible. It was cool to see all the growth that I've achieved during this time off. Of course, like it's not something that you necessarily want to step out of the cage for a year, but due to the pandemic and everything, it was completely out of my control. So it was just good to kind of come back, get the win, and be back in there and doing what I do. So it was great.
And what's the importance of this win? I mean, to get back in the win column, the division is really lining up, and Jesse Mealy, is one of those names that people are talking about.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this was I tried not to put too much pressure on myself, but obviously this was super important for me to come back, especially after a loss, and to really prove myself within a division that's slowly stacking up more and more. It made a lot of sense, especially against someone like Jessie, like you said, someone that was ranked number 7. She was a jiu-jitsu black belt. These were all things that were sort of, again, like I'm always pretty much the underdog, but it's always nice to come up ahead someone that's a little bit more experienced and everything like that, and then still put on a good performance. It means everything, and obviously mentally, it's put me on a good high. It's put my whole gym and everyone that's behind me in a good place, and it's just good to come back and enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of people that talk to me about being an underdog. Some people get mad about it. Why are people, looking at me this way? Some people eat it up and love it. What's your take on that? Do you love being the underdog? Do you hate it? Do you wish people would, put some respect on your name?
Well, I think like I don't know if there's been one fight that I haven't been the underdog. So it's sort of like whether I love it or hate it, it doesn't really doesn't matter. And I guess
Yeah.
the point now, it's just like I enjoy it, like I expect it and enjoy it. It's sort of normalized for me. And of course, like I just the only person that's going to believe in you is you. No one should probably believe in you more than yourself. So for that reason, it just kind of gives me more motivation. It always sort of puts me in that spot, and I'm just like, okay, eventually I'm working to the point where I'm going to be the favorite. I'm going to be the champion, and I'm going to be the plus whatever it is. So it'll
Mhm.
be good. Like once that kind of comes around, I think that will be something that I'll be a little bit more grateful for, knowing that I've always been an underdog.
And I think you have a future in motivational speaking. I mean, that, no one's going to believe in you but you. It's pretty awesome. You know, and so,
one Hundred
Jesse
percent.
Mealy just fought the former champion in Julia Budd. I mean, how close are you to fighting a Julia Budd or a Chris Cyborg?
Yeah, I would say very close. Obviously, this is a question that I've been asked a few times. It's one of those divisions that if you have one or two wins or two or three wins, you start kind of really heading towards the title and getting those big name fights. Someone like Kat Zingano as well, obviously coming into our promotion, then as well getting a win straight away kind of pushes her forward, and you're expecting
Mhm.
those kind of really good matchups for her. So these are all things that are definitely going to come up, and I can imagine maybe in the next year or two, like seeing someone like Chris Cyborg or Julia Budd across from the cage from me, it would definitely be something that I'm excited for and motivated for. So it'd be good.
Absolutely. And I mean, like you just said, excited. I mean, how excited would you be to share the cage with one of those fighters? Not only because you'd probably be fighting for a belt, but I mean, just the skill level of the person across from you.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of like will be that pivotal point and moment in my career that I'm like, okay, now I'm at this point where I'm
Mhm.
sharing the cage. I have the respect and name of my own to be able to stand across from these guys. And I think it would just be internally satisfying. But again, like, yeah, I would just be super grateful to be able to do these things and these, I guess, like, almost like fantasy fights that are now a realistic thing. So it's kind of
Absolutely. Yeah.
exciting for
Yeah.
sure.
And another name that's come up a lot is Leah McCourt. You guys were supposed to fight. You have said you still want to do that fight. What excites you about that fight? And is that still a possibility? Have you talked to Bellator saying this is what I want next?
I think like I haven't necessarily had direct conversations with them about it, but I know it's like it's definitely a match that they still wanted to have. It's definitely an exciting fight for me, especially like it was, especially when we were matched up in the UK. It was going to be great to go
Hmm.
over again that underdog thing, enjoying being the underdog, coming in and getting the upset. That's something that I always obviously have to do because it's not like we're ever going to have, or probably anytime soon, have fights in Australia. So it's sort of like coming to people's hometowns and stuff that motivates me a lot. It's an
Hmm.
exciting fight. Obviously, she's got a lot of momentum at the moment. Um, I'm hoping that her surgery went well and her rehab and everything goes well so that we can really start putting this in the pipeline and getting a locked in date. I know that she wants to honor it as well, which is great. So I'm excited that somebody else is excited to fight me. She's the one who said it at the beginning. She's the one who kind of pushed it at the start. And then obviously we got matched up. We were super excited for it. And now all we have to do is kind of get that match up again and find a date and a location where we can do it.
Yeah, and not just two fighters that want it, but I think the whole fan base, two fighters that are big fan favorites and very exciting for the future of both of you. So like we said, a year off. Talk to me about that year off. What was the most important thing for you? And maybe talk about your gym as well. Was it a certain skill set? Was it a mindset, mentality, fight IQ? What was the biggest thing that you improved on in this last year, before we saw you back in the cage?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we had our lockdowns as well. We had our restrictions, and unfortunately, during that time, a few of my gyms shut down, just because obviously it was hard to kind of come back, and therefore that really just put a lot of change into this last year. I really feel like I'm in a massive transitional period in my life where I'm kind of creating like another routine that it wasn't maybe the same as what it looked like this time last year, which has been exciting at the same time and all positive. My gym, like you said, King's Academy, that's definitely been a massive staple, not just from the skills side of things, but just the community side of things. I'm not going to ever sit here and say that the last year and a bit was like all butterflies and rainbows because obviously it wasn't, and I'm sure a lot of people around the world are experiencing that same thing. Especially at the beginning of COVID, it was really tough, like having
Hmm.
my fight get pulled and no real direction and no real understanding of when we'll get back to life and when someone who's all the way in Australia on this other side of the world will be able to come over and travel and be able to fight in other countries and on my promotion that I'm signed to. So all of these things were like big adversities, but I think the positive thing is that a lot of good came out of it. I now, with the guys at Kings, my team's really solid. I've got my head coach Renato through the MMA FFT team as well. So I've got two different kind of new teams that I've really slid in really well. We all are on the same page mentally. We've all created like a really good community. We all support each other. It's just like all of these things that I've kind of been searching for, honestly, for like the last few years after traveling, coming back to Australia and trying to find a team like that. It's sort of come within this pandemic, which is unexpected, but really, really positive for. And I think I really showed that in my last performance, how well
Uh,
it's kind of helped me.
100% agree. A great performance, and during COVID, um, you actually, when you came over to fight over here in Connecticut at Mohegan Sun, when you came back, you actually had to have a 2-week quarantine. That's correct, right? I mean, was there
Yes.
ever a second guess? I mean, and maybe it just shows that how much you love what you're doing and wanting to continue to do it. But I mean, how hard was that 2-week quarantine? And B, was there a second guess before the fight? Like, do I really want to go across the world during all of this and then come back and be locked away for 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, like for me, there was no second guess. I was like, whatever needs to be done will be done. However, like even if I have to pay for my own flights, like at this point,
Hmm.
like just with everything unknown, it was getting so intense. And I mean, the second guess was really coming from Bellator. It was obviously it's costing them a lot to fly me over, in comparison to domestic guys that are on the roster. And the flights at the moment are ridiculous. Like they're not making any sense. They like are obviously only getting half filled to capacity, so therefore the prices are really high. Even like on the way back, we were looking at routes and like to go from Connecticut to Sydney, it was $11,500. Like it's not a normal price tag for a one
Hmm.
way international flight. So these were all kind of adversities that we were looking at. In a sense that obviously Bellator was like, is it worth getting you over? Like we will maybe just pay you instead. Which isn't, I don't think it's bad on their part. I think it's just a smart move. I mean, you're
Yeah.
looking at all these other guys coming from like interstate and stuff, and obviously they're not doing like a 2 week quarantine. It was very expensive to do the quarantine.
Hmm.
Obviously, that's all out of our own pocket now. At the beginning of the pandemic, it was funded by the government, but now it's all out of our own pocket. So all of these things were just extra little tag alongs. So it was like no second guessing from me. I was like, honestly, like if it is 11.5 grand, I'll pay the other 9 grand. Like I don't care. Like I honestly don't care. I just want to fight. Like I don't want to get paid to sit at home. I would
Hmm.
love to keep my momentum going, show everyone what I've been doing, show everyone what I've been working on. This is all what I really love to do. And to be honest, like the quarantine wasn't that hard. Like for me personally, I mean, I'm an only child, so I'm very used to kind of being by myself. I live by myself, that kind of thing. So it honestly wasn't that hard, but it was more like obviously putting that pressure on my coach. He has a wife and kid at home, so like these are all
Yeah.
things that like it was more about how everyone else is going to get affected. Me personally, like I'm a fighter, and I always kind of say that all fighters are fairly selfish in their own sense, just because it's an individual sport and we kind of have to look after ourselves. So
Hmm.
yeah, for me it was no second guessing, but these were all kind of like little loopholes that we had to jump, and I'm just glad that we got to be able to do it and it went so smoothly.
And absolutely bring home a win. It makes that 2 week quarantine a lot better. I'm assuming. I'm sure a lot of binge watching some shows. And so outside of the cage, you're just as big. I mean, you've got sponsorships. You worked with Disney. You've got such a great social media following. I mean, tell me about some of these activities that you're doing outside of the cage that are just as great as what you're doing inside the cage.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. Like this whole year off has kind of given me the opportunity to really open up new avenues and kind of work on my brand and work on all these little side hustles. So it's been amazing. I mean, like I think the universe really provided for me. Like it was a bit of a struggle shoot at the start, like I said, and then
Hmm.
after, like I popped my head out of kind of that fog of pandemic and everything like that. It really like the universe came back to me, and for that reason, like the Bose thing was phenomenal to be a part of. I'm slowly watching it leak more and more, slowly having more people screenshot or take a photo of
Hmm.
things that they're seeing of me, which is amazing. Like that in itself is such a satisfying feeling, to know that I'm in the direction that I want to be. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm definitely heading on that route. And having these experience and having this resume that I'm slowly building is going to be great. Especially kind of, I sort of put a lot of pressure on myself sometimes, and I'm like, man, I don't have the following or the things that I would like,
Hmm.
obviously to where I be, but that's why people like us succeed, because we're always constantly putting pressure on ourselves. And then when other people from the outside kind of looking in compliment you or say how positive these things are happening, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like I'm only 26. I have all these great things kind of happening, and I'm excited to just do more and more and keep it growing. So it'll be great.
Hmm. And can you tell us a little bit about the about the Disney partnership?
Yeah, I mean that was like super random. They actually reached out to me through DMs too, or through I think yeah email or DMs or something, and I was like, oh,
Hmm.
this is
Slid in the DMs.
amazing. Yeah, that's how I think we're all kind of functioning these days, especially with a kind of virtual connection. The new way we sort of allow to connect with each other. So it was really good. It happened sort of. They reached out before the pandemic really hit. Because of course Mulan was going to be something that was released into cinemas, and then during the whole pandemic things changed. There was a lot of unknown. What are we going to do? How is it going to get released, etc., etc. And then obviously eventually we came up with like, or they came up with this premiere through Disney Plus and that kind of thing, just a different way to add to it. So it kind of changed the dynamic of the collaboration that we were going to do, because I was going to go to the um, premiere and I was going to do
Hmm.
certain media and stuff like that instead, just to support it. But of course, it just changed to a lot more virtual and a lot more social media, which was a great experience for me because it's something that I always want to improve on. Social media is ever changing, so you've got to obviously stay with the trends and everything like that. So of course, like I just wanted to, yeah, do my best in collaborating with those guys, and it seems to have got a really good reception. So all of these things are going to be positive in the future for sure.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it earlier. I mean, what you've done in the cage. I mean, like you said, within a year you should be having a title shot. You just talked to me about sponsorships and working with Disney about Mulan, all this stuff. You're only 26 years old. I mean, does it ever kind of go through your head that like you've done all this, and most 26-year-olds aren't doing things like this?
Yeah, I mean it does. It's weird. Like I think of the quarantine thing, and the whole like even like obviously fight week we were in our hotel rooms a lot because we weren't interacting with the public. I've had a lot of time with my own thoughts, and I guess it's
Yeah.
like these kind of extravagant events and stuff that kind of bring up all feelings and bring up all good and bad, like but a lot of positive for me. Like it's sort of just like allowed me to take a quick sec, look out the window and really appreciate what I have and what I've done, and look back on all these achievements and sort of like it's funny like I don't realize when you're doing it because obviously it's just something that you do and you've like I've
Hmm.
traveled and I've done these things and these things that are not major to me maybe mentally, and then I have the perspective of somebody else who maybe I look up to and they're like, oh, you traveled, and I was like, yeah, like but you've done this, and they're like, oh, but I never traveled, and you're just like, oh, it's cool just to be able to learn off people and to be able to sort of like see your achievements and recognize them, and then yeah, I guess be grateful for them. And I like this life that I have lived 26 years from where I came from, and from from what I had offered to me. Like I had everything that my mom could possibly give me, but I'm an only child from a single parent from a very, very, very small place in New Zealand that like a lot of people don't know. So I was like, man, what I've created, like this is a dream at the moment.
Hmm.
And it sort of feels like, especially after I got out of quarantine, it really does feel like I'm in this weird dream transitional phase. But it's allowed me to be more spiritual, allowed me to be more like grateful and just understanding, and it just ride it however long I can. So just keep going, keep the momentum, and hopefully the universe will kind of back me during that whole thing.
I love that, and super successful only at 26. We all look forward to what the future holds for you. I mean, if when do you think you'll be back in the cage? I mean, what would you like in a perfect world?
I've definitely been pushing for the whole February, if possible. I know, obviously, with everything going on at the moment, the US going into their second lockdown in most states and everything like that, there's a little bit of unknown with how that will affect international travel and everything like that. So I'm just putting out into the universe February. I think that would be a great time for Leah as well, if we can get that matchup, because obviously she just came back from surgery and everything. I know she was kind of wanting to aim for December, but I really don't think December would be doable, especially since they only really have that one show, Ali Malay
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
Velasquez. So it looks like, yeah, February I think would be fantastic. It would be a fantastic time for me, fantastic time for her, and I think it would be a great start to 2021. And if we can hopefully be popping out at the end of a pandemic, that would be even better.
And if Leah's not ready, would you take someone else, or is that something you want to wait for?
No, 100%. Like I'm not really. I want to keep this momentum going. I want to work off that win. I want to make up for the last year of,
Hmm.
of sitting on the sidelines. So anyone and anywhere, to be honest, is sort of my
Okay.
mentality. But as long as it's someone that's above me that I can kind of obviously get an opportunity off, that would be great. I'm not kind of looking towards anyone that I've already kind of beaten or anything that's going to keep me stagnant. I want to keep moving and really take this momentum as much as I can.
Awesome. And my last question for you, as like you said, U.S. is going somewhat into a second lockdown. I'm over here in Boston, Massachusetts. As someone who's dreamed about going to Australia or New Zealand, give me the top three things I have to do when I do end up traveling over there eventually.
True. Because even I'm like, now that our borders are open, I'm going to Cairns and everything next week, which is a place that I've never been to, and I'm still exploring my own
Yeah.
country, which is really great. I think New Zealand, you'd have to definitely go to Queenstown.
Okay.
There's a lot of bungee jumping, there's a lot of good seafood, there's a lot of everything. That's a really great place. And of course, Auckland has like a big city and then good MMA and everything like that as well. Australia, Sydney, you got to do Sydney Harbour, you got to go to the Opera House, you got to go to Luna Park, all those basic touristy things. But that
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
takes like half an hour and you're pretty much done. So I think Sydney definitely like good eats in the city. And then the Gold Coast, that's my home, my place, my
Hmm.
biggest love. But one of like no matter where I go in the world, I'm always like nothing beats the Gold Coast. You have to go to the beach, you have to get an acai bowl, and I would say I guess like probably you would have to go maybe like jet skiing or something like that. That's very like I guess touristy kind of thing to do on the Gold Coast, but there's beautiful things to do for sure.
Absolutely. And I hope you know that whenever I do go, whether it's 10 years from now or not, I'm going to go and look back at this interview and say, what did Janay Harding tell me to go to?
For
Um,
sure.
well,
Shoot me a
Janay,
DM and ask me what's the best to do. Go for
absolutely, I will.
it.
And so I appreciate the time, Janay. We all look forward to the future for you, both inside and outside of the cage. And I hope to see you back in the cage in February.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.